Hello and welcome to those who stumble across this. Obviously, the Templin Institute video. I've never heard of Templin Institute before this whole kerfuffle that he currently finds himself in, and this not very good video or smart take. So I'm gonna make fun of it, and obviously, like many others have done, show why he's wrong on things. I haven't watched the entirety of the video, but he does talk too slow for me, and his voice kind of annoys me, so I sped it up. It will be playing at 1.25, unless it starts taking even longer, in which case I'll speed up to 1.5. Female Space Marines, oh boy. Quite the better editor than me. Also, if you're wondering, no, female Space Marines can't happen. It's a terrible idea, and yeah, just don't.
The process of transforming a new recruit into a warrior of the Adeptus Astartes is among the most challenging and complex operations that the Imperium of Mankind is still capable of performing. It remains a dangerous procedure, with many of its underlying principles barely understood, and even an otherwise healthy applicant might suffer from unpredictable mutations or other adverse effects on their physical, mental, or spiritual well-being.
Well, he's gotten it right so far, kind of.
According to those familiar with the process, the first requirement of any Space Marine applicant is that they be biologically male. But this says
That is true. And as so far, he gets it relatively correct, which is why it's all the more strange when he, like so many others, just can't comprehend the following sentences.
understandably led to the question, why? Why are there
Well, the sentences of why it can't happen, it's pretty obvious.
no female Space Marines? The official line on the matter is that the process by which Space Marines are created relies inherently on the hormonal and biological makeup of the human male, meaning that only males can be subjected to the transformation.
And for many players, this is enough. And for myself, this is a good enough explanation. It's been the explanation since 2nd edition. All the way back in the early editions of the game, it's all the way down here. They must be male because zygotes are key to male hormones and tissue types, hence the need for tissue compatibility tests and psychological screenings. Alright, well, that was years ago. What about the newest lore? Well, the Horus Heresy 2.0 rulebook, which came out just a few months ago. Process by which Marines are created relies inherently on the hormonal and biological makeup of the human male, meaning that only males can be subjected in the transformation. Wow. Still the same after 25, 30 years. How remarkably consistent.
Okay, so there it is. Case closed, right? There are
Indeed, but I know you're not going to stop here.
no female Space Marines due to limitations inherent to the process of creating them. Well, not really. The most important thing to remember when analyzing the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium, something which sadly many people seem to forget or ignore, is that every bit of information we have.
So, problem with this. This whole, it's all real and none of it is real. This nonsense was made to excuse the Black Library authors and GW staff when they fuck something up. And I'm not talking just like the retcon, like the Necrons or what have you. It's when you had shit like Eldar stealing Imperial tanks or Space Marines with multi-lasers, obviously being the two probably most infamous examples. Aaron Dembski-Bowden, like many of the Black Library authors, like this whole it's all real or it's all canon, but not all of it is true. They like this line because it excuses them when they get called out for doing something unbelievably stupid. It's a good shield for your writers for when they fuck something up. They can just hide behind this nonsense of, oh, it's all real, but none of it's true. But not all of it is true. It's a cop-out from a company. GW should be held to a higher standard. And any company that tries to pull this same shit should be held to a higher standard.
Every slice of text, every image, every piece of footage, everything is coming from a source that can be either biased, misinformed, or outright lying. This universe can never be condensed into a neat and tidy encyclopedia where every bit of data is attributed to some peer-reviewed journal or first
Mostly because it's a fictional universe and you're reading about it in a book.
hand account.
And that one, you can't even do that with real life. Having everything ever be documented by journals and whatnot, completely unreasonable. And obviously, when you're coming at this from a book, you're coming at from the perspective of God, basically. You are seeing the events unfold. It's from a first-person perspective. Usually in the books, they'll tell you if this is a chronicler recanting events or whatnot.
The history of the Imperium and the galaxy it inhabits is instead a blend of legend, myth, contradictions, deception, and forgery. In the grim darkness of the far future, objective truth does not exist. Anyone who tells you otherwise is probably looking to claim your soul. So if you read the aforementioned quote and decided to accept it at face value, good for you. The Imperium is always in need of easily persuaded, uncritical souls to work as leech harvesters and mind thralls. But for me,
Humorous.
The more interesting way to interpret this universe is to never fully trust anything you've been told.
So, you're about to get in some real stupid here.
So when available sources claim that the process of creating space marines is only successful in men, and in almost every instance, artwork and footage depicts the Astartes universally as men,
It's not almost, it's literally every piece of official art that's ever been released above a Space Marine, an Adeptus Astartes, or a Custodes. They're men. They've always been men.
I am inclined to believe that, yeah, female space marines don't seem to exist. But do I take this as unshakable evidence? No.
That's because you're an idiot.
Genetic engineering is one of the few areas of scientific advancement that survived the Age of Strife more or less intact. It is very likely the only field of study in which the Imperium can even approach the marvels and miracles of the Golden Age of humanity. This is precisely why the Emperor used it as the basis of the Thunder Warriors, Custodes, and eventually the Space Marines.
For the most part.
The idea that the Imperium's biotechnical divisions were able to create genetically modified warriors who can spit acid and acquire a subject's memories by eating its flesh were somehow thwarted by comparatively minor differences in human hormones.
Just because they can engineer certain things and they can do certain things doesn't mean they can just do everything. There are rules and limitations in place, especially with Gene Seed, which makes you a minor clone of a Primarch for all intents and purposes, which they transform you psychologically and physically to be more like your Primarch. And in the cases of Alpha Legion, it can get kind of silly.
Well, I don't buy it. Not completely.
Well, of course you don't buy it. You don't know anything about this setting.
I am also aware that Imperial organizations work tirelessly to suppress information, and that the decision of what information necessitates suppression often comes down to the archaic and nonsensical opinions of zealots and the insane. And furthermore, it is often very difficult to ascertain what is being deliberately suppressed and what the Imperium has just gotten wrong.
So, in the old codexes, they would black out lines to be like, oh, they don't want you to see this. Right? That'd be a case of in-universe propaganda, or, censorship. When you're reading the codex, or a Black Library book, or the rule book, or whatever have you, published by GW, unless stated otherwise, you are basically from a first-person perspective or the perspective of God. You are seeing the events unfold as they do. You're not seeing a chronicler's, you're not seeing the chronicler's remembrancers' depictions of these things happening. You are seeing them happen as they happen.
The earliest encounters with the Necrons saw them labeled as Chaos Androids.
No, when the Necrons were first brought into the setting, they were called Chaos Androids. That was then changed, retconned, if you will. I would prefer to say evolved into a better concept.
Well, until recently, it was deemed as incontrovertible that the Squats had been rendered extinct by the Tyranids.
So, the Squats being extinct and being brought back, there were ways they could do it, and they've done it. They've been so deep in the core worlds that most of the Imperium didn't notice them. I still don't like the fact that they did this, and I think it's stupid, but there are ways to go about it. Have they gone about it very well? I would say no, but other people would say sure, most definitely.
Even the Imperium's own history is often misunderstood. There were times when the prevailing narrative was that Horus was not the Emperor's favored Primarch, but rather an especially competent general, and
So this is taking old lore of back when the Primarchs were just the first generals of these, the first Space Marine chapters, legions. I don't remember they were called legions at the time. He's taken Rogue Trader lore and trying to shove it into current 40k lore, which doesn't work, because Rogue Trader is Rogue Trader, and Warhammer 40k is Warhammer 40k. Now that might confuse you, because you might be thinking to yourself, 40k came from Rogue Trader, and that's true. However, it's evolved so far and so differently from then that it's pretty much, outside of an aesthetic, a kind of a theme. They're not very similar. Rogue Trader had shit like Obi-Wan, Sherlock Clouseau, and half Eldar librarians of the Ultramarines. And Space Marines were super genetically engineered hyper super soldiers. They were just guys in power armor. Criminals, if I remember correctly.
Heresy lasted
Whole thing is fucking stupid.
only 7 days and 7 nights. With all this in mind,
And here's the fan fiction chapter that everyone thinks was a real thing because people don't know what different magazine titles mean.
and my personal interpretation is that female Astartes almost certainly existed during the time of the Great Crusade.
Your personal interpretation has nothing to do with what is and is not canon, what is possible in the setting. Just because you want it to be doesn't mean it is so. It's a very simple thing to understand for most children, but here we are.
I think the Emperor, in this progressive era, had fully mastered the
Fucking progressive. Warhammer, Jesus.
creation of the Astartes, regardless of gender. Perhaps even some famous figures from this era were in fact female. But at some point,
Except that we have no evidence, and there never will be evidence, that any Space Marine was female, or ever will be female.
during the history of the Imperium, possibly because of complications with implanting gene seed, but more likely because of some ignorant proclamation by the ecclesiarchy or another imperial institution, the idea of recruiting female Space Marines fell out of favor.
Or it's just not possible in universe, because they've established it's not possible in universe for 30 years. This isn't hard.
Today, if any still remain within the chapters, they are a rarity. Furthermore, I'm almost
No.
convinced that with the slightest bit of effort, the Space Marine chapters could again accept female recruits. But the Imperium has become so entrenched in religious dogma and ignorance that it's become unable to question and possibly disprove what it considers to be the absolute truth. The
Nonsense.
Imperium senselessly wasting 50% of its own available manpower, if you
So, I'm going to let him finish this sentence, because what he's about to say is just retarded.
the absolute truth. The Imperium senselessly wasting 50% of its own available manpower, if you'll pardon the term, because of some ancient misunderstanding, is the kind of tragedy this regime is built on.
So, the Imperium is not wasting 50% of its manpower on Space Marines. Space Marines are a fraction of a percent of the total fighting force of the Imperium. There are 1,000 Marines in 1,000 chapters. That's a million Marines, give or take a few hundred because of certain chapters being bigger or smaller. But you have hive worlds with cities with a population in the billions. Now, I know most people are pretty stupid and don't understand the difference in size just between the numbers 1 million and 1 billion, but it's a lot. So you got a million Marines, you got billions, if not trillions, of guardsmen, millions of Adeptus Sororitas, 10,000 custodes, and so on and so forth. God only knows how much in the Mechanicus. Space, even during the Great Crusade and the Heresy, the Marines were never most of the Imperium. Because that's just nonsense. I don't know if this was just you misspeaking, but with the amount of editing going in, I figure you would catch that if you didn't believe it. But also, going into the nonsense of wasting half their manpower, it wouldn't be wasting it'd be wasting half the recruiting pool if females could be recruited into a Space Marine, or turned into a Space Marine, I should say. However, Space Marines don't just take schmucks. They take the single best of the best of the best out of an entire planet's worth of populations. And they have to be pure of mind, pure of soul, pure of body, and so on and so forth. And they have to go through intense, nonsensical physical trials before they're even accepted to go further into more testing, in order to just keep testing them to whittle everything down until you only have the best and brightest left. That's not 50% of your recruiting pool. That is less than 1% of a planet at most.
Now, admittedly, this is just
Twitter icon. That's a simple. That's his tweet that started this, and is that Arch Warhammer? Why does he live rent-free in all these idiots' heads? Guys, Templin Institute, anyone who agrees with him and hates Arch, quit letting him live rent-free in your head. It's dumb. He's a silly Norwegian man.
Just my personal headcanon, or fan fiction if you prefer.
Oh, at least you're admitting it. You're just making your shitty fan fiction.
And it's based on even less evidence than the conclusion that there are no female space marines whatsoever. I'm sure you can poke holes in my opinion just as easily as I did in the official stance of the Imperium. I don't even necessarily think that my stance is the most realistic. It's just what I happen to think is most interesting.
What does that even mean? You find it most interesting in the possibility of a fraction that some may be out there at one point in time in the entire history of the Imperium, there could be one female space marine. Why is that interesting? I know this is kind of this seems to be kind of a nothing video, other than just restating bad points, but Christ almighty.
That's what I enjoy about this universe. It invites differences of interpretation. But again...
And in some instances, I guess, you could say there's differences of interpretation, but not for shit like this. You could have a difference of interpretation of, is this character a good person or a bad person? The answer, usually they're terrible people. Or they're trying to make the best out of a bad situation. But most people's interpretations tend to not be, that are really out there, tend not to be very good. Being mostly just terrible fanfiction sounding nonsense.
Again, I can't put any more stock into this own interpretation of mine than I would into anyone else's. The universe just doesn't work that way. Is it possible there never were any female space marines? Yes.
No, it is impossible. Never be female space marines. Also, this artwork is... it's good on a technical level, but it looks like shit. The fuck is with the nose ring? The fuck with you in the helmet? Ugh.
Is it possible there are female space marines somewhere out there in the galaxy?
No.
Yes. Is it possible there could be an entire chapter consisting only of female space marines?
No.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's actually good artwork, though.
And is it possible that this all-female chapter is in fact the Ultramarines or the Black Templars?
Definitely not. Have you never read a book of this universe? Or looked at the art? Oh my god.
Or the Space Wolves? There's a lot of evidence to the contrary, and while I can be 99...
In fact, there is only evidence to the contrary. You are literally pulling an idea out of thin air and going, this is a possibility. You are nonsense.
99% certain that this isn't true, and that Marnius Calgar is indeed a man, the very nature of this universe means it's impossible to say with absolute certainty. Even in our own era, there have been times when historical figures commonly believed to have been men were later discovered to have been women.
Extraordinary rare, but
true.
Doesn't
this kind of revelation seem like it would fit just perfectly into the age of the Imperium? Sure.
Would it, though? I mean, the Imperium isn't exactly a misogynistic place. It's pretty equal opportunity in the fact that you will fight and die for the Emperor, or you'll be pulled behind you'll be pulled into a prison and shot. Oh no, a random High Lord turned out to be a woman. Okay, moving on. What the fuck?
Sure, a figure like Marnius Calgar is a bit of a stretch. If evidence came out that he was in fact a woman, I probably wouldn't believe that and fall back on my own interpretation. But I mention this...
So you don't even believe your own nonsense, is what you're saying. You're literally making this for rage bait. Which I shouldn't be surprised by, but...
only to illustrate the idea that history is not immune to drastic change in light of new evidence. And the history of the Imperium even more so. Maybe in our current era, being 99% certain about something is enough to arrive at a justifiable conclusion, but the 42nd millennium is a time in which we need to forget the promise of progress and understanding, and the power of science and technology.
You got that off the wiki, because I don't believe this man has ever read a book.
Within the Imperium, that 99% might as well be zero. And this extends to every aspect of the far future. Did Horus kill Sanguinius before his final confrontation with the Emperor?
Yes.
Maybe.
No, there is no maybe about it.
I'd even go so far as to say probably. But if someone...
Why probably? No, it's... Yes. Oh my goodness.
...told me that during the Siege of Terra, Sanguinius fell to the Black Rage, killed Horus, and
Fucking
then tried to kill the Emperor. And this...
No, hold on.
Siege of Terra, Sanguinius fell to the Black Rage, killed Horus, and then tried to kill the Emperor. And this was suppressed by the High Lords of Terra to preserve the honor of one of mankind's greatest heroes. There is nothing I can do to definitively prove that person wrong.
There's plenty you could do. One, the Black Rage didn't exist until after the heresy, or after Horus... The Black Rage didn't exist until Sanguinus died. That's the whole point of it. The Red Thirst existed already, but the Black Rage was a after effect of the psychic backlash of Sanguinus dying. to his legion. It was such a blow to them. He fucking cursed his legion in death on accident. Horus getting killed by the Emperor has been a thing since fucking forever. Jesus. Literally, I don't know, I hope to God people don't honestly believe that's a thing, but I wouldn't be surprised with the amount of stupid fucks that are in the hobby now. Or, well, I shouldn't say they're in the hobby. They're grifting. They're attaching themselves to the hobby like some kind of twisted anglerfish.
Likewise, nobody can disprove the idea that Space Marine chapters out there might have unlocked or retained the technologies allowing for the successful transformation of female recruits, or that female Space Marines might remain common across the chapters, and this has just been suppressed by the Inquisition for whatever reason.
So fucking dumb.
There are an endless number of explanations as to why.
This guy just, he sees artwork and he thinks it's canon. Or it could be canon instead of just some horny fucker wanted to draw a female cast Space Marine.
Female Space Marines might exist, and none of them conflict with the essential nature of the universe.
They do,
because
though.
The essential nature is fluid, always changing as new information is discovered.
No. It has been remarkably consistent for the last 25, 30 years. Whatever the fuck. Second. Well, so Rogue Traders it's really its own thing. Second edition it's finally finding its feet, and from third edition onwards, it's been remarkably consistent up until the Primera stuff is introduced. But even then, there are ways that it's still consistent. It just also fucks with other things. It has started to falter in its consistency, but there are still parts that are there. So that's a 20-year run of it being really, really consistent. Even with GW's nonsensical claim of, our writers are shit. Everything is canon, not everything is true, and we'll get stupid people to fall for it. Yuck.
And old information repressed.
The only constant is tone and atmosphere. The details are ultimately secondary to that.
And if you disagree with me, if your interpretation of the grim darkness of the far future is different from mine, well, this will be one of the few times I admit this, but your interpretation is every bit as valid as mine.
No, how fucking dare you? My understanding of the universe is grand. It's flawless. Your interpretation of the universe is fucking asinine. It's inbred. It's retarded. How dare you, sir?
If you can look honestly at the 42nd millennium and come to the conclusion that female Space Marines just don't belong there, not at
Yes, I will, and I do. They don't belong. It's a really terrible idea.
of any place of misogyny.
I don't know if you know this, but women tend to be weaker than men, and wasting resources precious as gene seed on a fighter that will never be as strong as a male fighter. When you have wars as crazy and over the top as 40k does, that is just a terrible waste. And I think you're about to say something extra stupid.
Millennium and come to the conclusion that female Space Marines just don't belong there. Not out of any place of misogyny, but a genuine belief that it just doesn't make sense given what we know. I respect your position.
No, you don't. You're a fucking bad liar.
And if tomorrow, some higher authority decrees
Oh yeah, Canuck.
that there are in fact female Space Marines, 100% full stop, I would, without reservation, defend your right to ignore that decree, and to continue.
No, you fucking wouldn't. I know you're kind. You're politically motivated, kind, always trying to infest everything. Like a bunch of locusts.
Continue to interpret this universe in whatever way makes it the most interesting to you. But I would ask that you extend this same mindset to me and everyone else, whether I say that female Space Marines exist, or Sanguinius killed Horus, or that the entire universe of the 42nd millennium is actually within a bottle kept by a wizard in Reichland.
So, that last one makes more sense than literally everything else. Everything stupid you said in this video. That's probably the least stupid thing you'll say in this video.
What I truly love about the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium is that its very nature precludes the possibility of some.
Also, I'm pretty sure they can still refer to it as the 31st millennium in universe, because when Gilman got out, they actually couldn't figure out what fucking year it was, so I think in most of their marketing they still call it 41st. I'm not sure, actually. 41st millennium flows a lot better than 42nd millennium to me, but maybe I'm just crazy.
Anyone coming in and telling you what is right, what is wrong, and that there's only one way to experience it. And I'll let you in on a little secret. During one of our investigations into the Imperium of Man, I included a detail that has since become the single most referenced.
You make shitty lore videos, from what I understand. lore videos on YouTube are not investigations. Usually it's you lore. Okay, most lore channels, and I do mean most, are really bad. They are fuckers who are too lazy to read a book, so they read a wiki article. I shouldn't even say read. They glance at a wiki article and watch videos from other lore YouTubers. And usually they still, by doing this, they just kind of share the same incestuous information pool, and it's mostly surface level correct, but details are always wrong. And it's infuriating, the fact that so many people can watch these fucking things and sit there and go, ah, yes, I am now an expert on Warhammer lore. I watched fucking the Templin Institute, or the fucking One Mind Syndicate, or whatever the fuck else idiots, or whatever the other fucking lore channels. Because they're all it's like the prequel hating, where it was all the reviewers that hated the prequels kind of had and watch each other's content, so they all shared the same criticism, and it was just a giant criticism incest that made no sense. Most lore videos are like that. It's terrible. I don't watch any lore channels, mostly because I know more than them, frankly.
Lore on this channel. We receive comments about how cool it is almost daily. The latest one at time
Read a book.
of recording was left about 80 minutes ago. But that little
Or listen to an audiobook. Hell, honestly, just read the wiki yourself and then read a book.
bit of lore, according to the latest information available, either no longer exists or never did. But I thought it was cool and I included it anyways. Whether or not it's true really isn't important. It's true to me, and that's enough. And given how popular it's become on this channel, I kind of think people agree with me, even if they don't know it. And while I certainly understand and even appreciate having an ironclad history, a firm and uncompromising canon or continuity, if you will, there are also times when it's refreshing to just not deal with that. Wouldn't it
That's called fanfiction. And oh my god, he's bringing up the terrible.
have been nice to have the option to say that Rey is not Palpatine's granddaughter, or that the war
I do have that option, and I've taken that option. Actually, no, I don't have that option. Because according to Disney's universe, Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter, as little sense as that makes. But according to the correct canon, which is George Lucas's canon, she doesn't exist. And one day I'll make a rant about it. But there are three different main canons of Star Wars, and Disney's is the least of them all.
against the Night King was way cooler than whatever this is, and have
Controversial opinion that only I have on this channel. Other people who appear here like Game of Thrones, but I thought Game of Thrones was shit. From start to finish.
those interpretations be totally
Everyone else I know who watched it fucking hates this fight as well, so they probably also just don't acknowledge this. I would imagine most of them just don't acknowledge this. The rest of this shit is happening. I'll go back.
to have the option to say that Rey is not Palpatine's granddaughter, or that the war against the Night King was way cooler than whatever this is, and have those interpretations be totally valid. Now, I am no fool, and I have no doubt that I will have failed to convince most or even any of you, but let's make a deal. If you decide to argue with me in the comments, include the following phrase somewhere in your argument. You will die as your weakling father died. You'll get the
See, I've scanned through the comments, and very little he has responded to very few that have had this in it. Mostly because he's a coward.
satisfaction of tearing me down with a badass
And he knows
line,
he's wrong.
And I, and everyone else at the very least, will know that you watched this entire video, were open to what I had to say, and that your argument is being made in good faith. Just keep the rest of it civil. My feelings can only be hurt so much. But if
Well, that's funny.
you think the idea of female space marines just being a possibility, according to one interpretation, is some kind of betrayal, if this discussion has
Some
caused you to
interpretations
decide
still.
that the woke moralists over at the Templin Institute have finally gone too far, if even
I have no idea if you're a woke moralist, but judging by this video, you are probably not moralist, but you haven't really said anything moralist yet. But you are definitely woke and retarded.
now you are furiously hitting that subscribe button, well,
I was never subscribed, and I never would be to a fucking lore channel.
the tree of any YouTube channel must from time to time be nourished by the blood of misogynists, and as the saying goes, you will not be missed.
Yeah, maybe he is a moralist. Misogyny.
In Incoming, the Templin Institute discusses the theories and ideas found across alternate worlds. Join other Templin Institute personnel on our Discord server, where discussions are held daily on the elements of world building, spaceship design, the best method of cooking rice, and other critical issues affecting alternate worlds. In the description.
So was this rage bait just for your fucking Patreon and your Discord? Is that what this is all about? You just want to get attention? I mean, it worked. It's not good attention, but it is attention. Honestly, if I had to take a guess, you're probably intelligent enough to know that most of the woke, I can't see my finger quotes, but quote-unquote woke individuals are very easy to scam money out of so long as you say the things they want to hear. For instance, they will donate money because they want to, own the what the fuck is it in America? Republicans. Or they want to own the conservatives or whatever the fuck. They want to beat the other side, so they'll throw money at you. To be fair, both sides do it because they're both fucking stupid. I'm convinced this was just a thing to get attention, rage bait, and attempt to get money for for a Patreon or some shit. And to be fair, it's worked for you. You've gotten lots of views. I'm sure this video will do decently in the algorithm. But more importantly than that, I want to discuss other things. Because he didn't make the argument, I'm surprised, but a lot of people like to bring up this stupid fucking, these ugly-ass old Rogue Trader era minis. The female warrior Gabs and female warrior Jane. Now, I don't know if you know this. They're not actually Space Marines. Intelligent viewer. They're proto-sisters of battle. Because there's this whole blurb over here, basically about before they were called I believe this was before they were called the Sisters of Battle. And they're called the Adeptus Sororitas. But you can see that symbol right there. And if you look closely, you can see it right there. And right there. They're fucking Sisters of Battle. They're not Space Marines. They just wear power armor, and the sculpting at the time wasn't good. So and you can even see in the artwork, it's a lot more like regular traditional Marine power armor than what it is now. And thankfully it looks much better now, because Christ. Now I know what you're also thinking. Oh, but did it say that on the blister packs? Well, I can't find the blister packs for Jane and Gabs here. So what I did find is what old blister packs from the era look like. And for instance, you got Space Orcs. Very clearly orcs. Robots. Very clearly robot. Space Marines. But with the series this is a part of, the Adventurers line, for everything I've seen, have been in packs like this. So remember, anytime anyone ever tries to tell you that these were female Space Marines, no, they're not. They never were. Also, I do find his video kind of funny, because as I was working, I was at work when this whole kerfuffle started, and on Twitter he's a lot more antagonistic, but in his video, and he's deleted a lot of comments and stuff they're ripping into him, and he's blocked a lot of people, because of course he did. But in his video he's all nice and polite, and oh, I will defend your right to disagree with me. But sure as shit, he's not. He asked people for a debate, and then he just hasn't taken anyone up on their offer, because I don't even believe he believes what he says. I'm convinced this is just a giant scam to get money and attention. I don't know anything about his channel. I don't know if his channel is doing well. I won't check. I don't care. At the end of the day, this is just very, very stupid and amusing, and it's actually made me sit there and go, maybe I will just make a bunch of maybe I will just make a couple of videos covering these silly female Space Marine arguments, because I'm tired of these grifters and tourists, or whatever you want to call them, these leeches coming into the hobby. I want them to go away. They're not welcome. They can fuck right off, preferably off a cliff. So, that's all I gotta say. This is fucking painfully stupid. But feel free to disagree with me or tell me if I got something wrong. I honestly... Or just ignore this video completely. I don't control what you do. So a friend just sent me this, and I thought it was kind of funny because I know I didn't really cover it, but it's the whole nonsense of. I mean, I did cover it, but I didn't go into excruciating detail as I could have about how his whole stance of nothing matters. But the fact that he apparently does Star Wars content, from what I'm told, and I really, a few times a year I really try and get into Clone Wars, but it's never been able to keep my attention. Are there any particular good arcs I can skip to? Like, what a fucking Neanderthal. Just watch a damn. You don't like Star Wars, or if you do, it's surface level and the same kind of locust-like grifting that you do for Warhammer. And just watch all of Clone Wars. Literally. Even the bad arcs, there are worse things out there to watch. If you can't keep your attention span, that speaks more to a problem about you. I do like this comment, though. I don't know who this is, but yeah.